So let's talk through 11 coverages you should be evaluating as a nonprofit insurance organization. It's going to feel like a little bit much. I'm going to try and give a little bit of detail. It's more detail than I can give in one video. First coverage you should be looking at, or set of coverages, is property insurance. Every nonprofit's a little bit different, but when I say property insurance, I'm talking about coverage for your building. I'm talking about coverage for your personal belongings, your equipment, desks, chairs, toys if you run a child care center. I'm also talking about business income and extra expense coverage if you get shut down. If there's a fire in your space and you have to relocate somewhere else, or there's a fire in your residential facility and now you're losing net income because the state's placing people elsewhere. That's all part of property insurance. A second coverage to think about is crime. Crime refers to money being stolen, and it gets stolen in different ways. It happens differently than a fire claim. When a building burns, it all burns at once. Usually when money is stolen, it doesn't get stolen all at once. It gets stolen a little bit at a time over a period of time. The bookkeeper's siphoning off $100 a week and does that over a couple of years. So that's crime. It's talking about personnel dishonesty, people stealing money. It's talking about theft of cash on hand. It's talking about money being stolen out of your electronic bank account, all that kind of stuff. Third thing to think about is general liability insurance. This is slip, trips, and falls on your premises. So if you're a food bank, it's a family walking in to pick up a bag of groceries and they slip in the parking lot. That's bodily injury. Or if you offer some type of product, if you're a food bank, somebody takes a can of beans and gets sick off the can of beans. That is bodily injury from a product. General liability is hurting somebody or breaking something as a general rule. Next coverage to think about is not for everybody, but it's for any nonprofit that's dealing with vulnerable people, and that's abuse and molestation coverage. If you're dealing with vulnerable people, whether it's elderly, homeless, mentally ill, intellectually and developmentally disabled, youth, seniors, there is a risk that one of your clients, one of the people you take care of, may have an inappropriate sexual relationship with one of your employees or a volunteer that acts on the behalf of your organization. And what you're going to need is you need a program that can pay for an attorney and a settlement in the event that it happens. I pray it never happens to you, but it happens all the time. And one of the nationwide trends is that the number of lawsuits and the amount it costs to settle one of these lawsuits is going up consistently. The next coverage to think about is professional liability. And once again, this is based on what type of nonprofit you are. If you are a foundation that gives money away, you don't really have a care that you provide. Professional liability is for organizations that provide some type of care or some type of service, a child care program or a group home or a senior center. If you're trying to keep track of somebody, professional liability protects you for lack of care that you provide to somebody else, an error or an omission. The example I like to give to help illustrate this is in a child care center. Let's say one of the kids gets out of the center, walks into the street, and gets hit by a car. Did you cause that damage as an organization? No, but somebody got hurt while they were in your program and you should have been watching. That's professional liability insurance in a nutshell. Next coverage to think about is auto insurance. Let me break this down two ways. Nonprofits are kind of funny in how they have fleets of vehicles. One are owned vehicles. That's straightforward. You need liability insurance. Maybe you get physical damage for your vehicle. The other part of being a nonprofit is we rely on volunteers. And if you're something like a Meals on Wheels, volunteers are driving their personal vehicles on your behalf. That's hired and non-owned auto. That is coverage in excess of somebody's personal auto insurance. And depending on how you deliver your programming, if you're a literacy council, you're a youth development program and your volunteers are driving on your behalf, you're going to need protection in the event that they get into a terrible vehicle accident. Next, let's talk about workers' compensation for a second. If you have paid employees, you need workers' compensation that's going to pay for their on-the-job injuries. Now, one wrinkle with nonprofits is we have a lot of volunteers too. Now, volunteers are not covered by workers' compensation unless they find a way to make it seem like you gave some type of compensation. You give them a t-shirt while they're volunteering at a 5K and they slip and fall at the 5K. Well, they may try and say that t-shirt was compensation and say, I'm entitled to on-the-job benefits. Makes some workers' compensation insurance companies a little bit skittish about insuring nonprofit organizations. Next coverage to think about is directors and officers liability. This protects your board from management decisions they make on behalf of the organization. It's usually financial decisions. It's you get $50,000 from the local government to deliver after-school programming, and you say, that's great, we need a vehicle, and you take that money and you spend it on a vehicle instead. And you can't prove that you used the money the way they said they wanted you to use the money. That's an example of a directors and officers liability claim. In my experience, directors and officers is one of the least understood coverages when I'm working with nonprofits. I'll get a question like, is my board covered? Well, the answer to that question is it depends on the lawsuit. Liability coverages follow the type of lawsuit that you have. Directors and officers liability refers to the management decisions and the financial decisions that your board make. Next coverage to think about is employment practices liability. You usually buy it alongside of directors and officers liability. Employment practices liability protects you for hiring and firing decisions that you make within the organization. It's another form of management. That's why they get bundled together. So it's things like wrongful hiring, wrongful firing, sexual harassment, retaliation, failure to promote. These are examples of employment practices liability lawsuits. Next coverage to think about is cyber liability insurance. We've all seen emails, we've all seen the trends that hacks happen all the time. Data breaches happen all the time. They happen at big tech firms, they happen at local governments, they happen at local nonprofits. Emails got hacked. I got an email from a local nonprofit that's the other day that I'd never really talked to, and they sent me a PDF attachment to download. Well, that was because their email got hacked. So, cyber liability protects you for damages that are caused to somebody else as a result of a data breach. And lastly, let's talk about accident medical for a second. Accident medical pays for no-fault injuries for people that get hurt on the premises. Now, this is baked into your liability policy unless somebody shows up on the premises every day. The two best examples of people that show up every day are volunteers, or if you're some type of youth development program, it would be the youth that show up. So, if you're a child care center, after school program, look at accident medical for the children. If you have a lot of volunteers and they're lifting, they're working in your food bank, you're going to want to look at accident medical in the event that they get hurt working on your behalf. So there you go. That's 11 coverages to think about as a nonprofit. If any of this has you asking questions about your program or your broker relationship, please request a quote from us at www.bitnerhenry.com. We can get you connected with somebody that works regularly with your type of organization. I'm Daryl Henry with Bitner Henry Insurance Group, and we serve those who serve others.